everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from June 17th, 2021, and I'm recording this on December 17th, 2021. I give those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant because the market is always moving and changing. And we are, as always, also looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they put out a list of 10 books, each of them, that they are like the hottest books of the week. And we can see what they're doing 6 months later, try to get an idea, think about why they hit the list to begin with, what factors have happened since then that may have changed to make them stay hot or get cold. So we all do a little better job of, when we're in the moment maybe, of thinking about, okay, why is this book on the list? What are the odds it's going to continue to be hot? Should I be patient? So that maybe we can make a little better decisions at what books we chase in the moment and what books we try to be patient on and don't let the FOMO grab us. So, with that said, we only have 16 books this week. There was 4 books on both lists. That's quite a bit of crossover. Normally we don't have quite that much. So let's get into these 16 books and see if we can learn anything. First up, we have The Toxic Avenger, #1. This is obviously the first appearance of The Toxic Avenger. We've been in talks for a while now that it's a movie. Peter Dinklage and Kevin Bacon were both being attached back then when this book hit the list. Back then, raw copies jumped up to like $35, and 9.8 jumped all the way up to $400. We know this is coming. We know there's a lot of pretty good actors attached to it. And this book is still going raw 20 to 45, 9.8, 400 to 500. So right in the same ranges, maybe up slightly. I put this as steady because you could get it occasionally for less, and basically worth it because it is, particularly on the 9.8 side, it's actually worth just slightly more. Little surprised by this, but we do know this is actually coming. There hasn't been any news lately, but this one has maintained a little more momentum than you usually see with some of these movies. Next, we have Sam and Twitch, #1. Basically, this hit the list because McFarlane started talking about that there was going to be a cop show based on these 2 characters from Spawn. This is obviously their first kind of self-titled book. Back then, it caused raw copies to start going for $15 to $35. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. So this one is definitely down. A bit of a trap. You could argue I'll be back, but if it was 25 average and now it's like a 5 to 10 average, so it's definitely down quite a bit. I will say there's not a lot of trust in this for me. McFarlane has claimed that we're going to get Spawn for how many years, and there hasn't been any follow through. He's a bit of a control freak, I think, and he has not worked well with Hollywood, so I have my doubts that we ever actually see this produced in any way, shape, or form. And even back then, when he said it was option, there was no streaming service or anything else attached to that option news he was claiming. So, be interesting to see if we ever get this. Next, we're going to move into covers. We have first cover this week is Spider-Verse #1, the second print. This is kind of a bit of a hard to find Miles Morales cover. I guess best I can tell, that's the only real there is like a couple of first appearances here, or at least Spider-Zero, I think, is the first appearance here. But yeah, this one was going for $55 to $70 on this second print back then. Now it's going 40 to 80, so it's basically sitting in that same range. You can definitely get a little bit cheaper on occasion. So I put this one as more of a steady I'll be back, because most of the sales are in the 40 to 60 side of the pricing, but there is a couple of sales a little higher. So apparently there's still a lot of love for this Miles book, or a lot of spec going on for this I think it was Spider-Zero. I forget now. There's so many different Spider characters. I can get them mixed up sometimes, but I think that's the one that's in this one. Next, our other cover this week is Static Season 1, #1, the Oliver Coipel 1 per store black and white variant. This was going for $40 to $50 out the gate at release. Now it's a $20 to $45 book. Interestingly enough, 9.8s were going for over $100, but that was like in late October, I think there might have been one early November. The only sales since then, there's been a couple of auction sales, and they've both went for like 45 and 60. So this book has definitely dropped back on the 9.8 sales. You're basically, the last two 9.8s have went for what you're paying for a raw copy, even with the raw copies dropping down. So this one's definitely been coming. I'll be back. On the raw side, those prices are still higher than maybe I would have expected, given what 9.8 you're going for, but this book it's a cool cover. We'll see. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about this Static series. So if you're reading it, put in the comments what you think of it. So next, we're going to be moving into Comic Buzz. We actually have 4 books related to that this week. First up, we have Venom number 9. First full appearance of Dylan Brock. I know he does appear in 7, but this is what everybody claims is the first full, even though Kate says 7 is his first appearance. Back then, raw copies were going for $80 to $90. A 9.8 hit $385, and this was obviously right at the same time that Venom 200 came out, the end of the Kate's run. We kind of got the new status quo where Dylan is kind of Venom. I haven't been reading this, so I'm not exactly, because I feel like it's supposedly going back and forth between the two of them or something. I'm not 100% sure exactly what's going on there. But Dylan has taken a bigger role, so that's why this book hit the list back then. Now, raw copies are going for 40 to 70. 9.8 is 150, 225. So this one is definitely backed up considerably, particularly on the 9.8 side. This is basically, you're talking an average of like 85 to an average of like 50. You could have put it as an I'll be back. I put trap. I feel like it's just enough of a drop that it was really more of a trap, particularly on that 9.8 side. Next, we have Nightwing number 78, a book you all know if you watch my channel for anything other than this that I love, because I'm a huge Nightwing fan. This is the start of the Tom Taylor run, but also the first appearance of Melinda Zuko. Spoilers, she's more than just Melinda Zuko if you haven't been reading this run. But anyway, back then, this was before we knew her full parentage. But back then, raw copies were going for $25 to $50. Now raw copies are only cost you $10 to $20. 9.8s are only running around $100 to $125. So this book is also backed up, turned into a bit of a trap. I think part of that is because we had there was the storyline was building with her. We had that first story arc, and then we jumped into Fear State. So Nightwing kind of got sidetracked for 3 issues. We're about to jump back onto the Bloodhaven side. I think next week the next issue comes out. So we'll see if the story starts building and if she plays a bigger role. I think she's going to play a fairly big role going forward, that if we get some momentum back on this book. But for now, it's actually a pretty, it's still a $10 to $20 book on a 6-month-old book with a new character. So we'll see. Next, we have Stray Dogs number 1. This was the hot indie series of this past year. I feel like this was, more of the newer ones. This was one that had a ton of buzz. There was a lot of people talking about it. It caused raw copies to jump up to $25 to $40. 9.8s back then were, though, only going for $80. This one has continued to kind of climb. Raw copies of this A cover are going for $50 to $75. 9.8s are up to $125 to $175. So this one's up. Kind of been straight cash over the 6-month period. There are a bunch of movie homage variants to this, or several of them. But this A cover is definitely doing very well in the secondary market. And there's still a lot of buzz about the series. And I think kind of the follow-up is getting ready to come out. I forget what it's called, but I do believe the follow-up is coming out sometime in the next couple of weeks, I think. Maybe not till after the first year. I forget now. Next, we have Usagi Yojimbo, number 20. This is the first appearance of Yukichi Yamamoto, this new character that had some buzz. It was teaming up with Usagi, another kind of Ronin-type character. This book was going for $15 to $25 raw right out of the gate. Still going 10 to 30-ish, so this is another one that's been pretty steady. 9.8 are running at 80 to 150. But it isn't I'll be back more than worth it, because most of the sales are on kind of that lower end, the 10 to 20, but with an occasional $25, $30 sale still mixed in there. So definitely one that you could get a deal on maybe if you're patient, but been pretty steady overall, and there seems to be quite a bit of buzz still maybe with this character. So I've been reading this Usagi run. I've barely read any Usagi, but seems to be a lot of buzz related to this newest IDW run. So Next, we're going to move into a little DC TV spec. This is Green Lantern number 25, first appearance of Atrocitus and Larfleeze, and this had hit the list because of spec that maybe these characters would be a part of the upcoming. We were getting some news back in the spring about casting and other stuff related to the Green Lantern show that's supposed to be coming to HBO Max at some point. I feel like we've been hearing about it for 3 years, and I'm not sure we're that close to it yet, but this book hit the list because people were expecting maybe these would be the villains. Back then, raw copies were going for $50 plus. Now it's a $20 to $35 book for a raw. 9.8s are still $250, $325, so that's a pretty good price for a $20 to $30 book raw, if you can find you a 9.8 for that price and get it slabbed. But overall, this has definitely dropped back down on that raw side where most of the sales are and turned into a bit of a trap from that perspective. We'll see if we ever get any news or updates. I feel like it's been a while, so we're probably due right after the first of the year for some sort of update on the timeline of this show. So it may be, that'll cause this book to jump again. Next, we have a little Star Wars spec. This is Darth Vader number 6. So there were rumors that this is the first appearance of the Order of Inquisitors, and there's a couple of Inquisitors that appear for the first time. And basically this hit the list because there were rumors that they were going to get their own show on Disney+. These rumors came from very unreliable sources, as they were talking about this book. So probably not a lot of truth behind this necessarily, but back then it caused raw copies to jump to $50 to $60 just because of these rumors. Now it's a $25 to $60 book. Overall, it's definitely down, but there is still occasional sales in that $50 to $60 range. 9.8s are still going for $250 to $300. Another book with a pretty good spread for getting one slabbed if you can find one, although I think this cover's pretty tough. But this is definitely an I'll be back. Definitely a book that has dropped back, and I don't know that there's any truth to the spec going on here. Next, we have What If featuring Planet Hulk. Number 1 from 2007. This is the first appearance of Scar, the son of Hulk. And this was rumors that he was going to be a part of the She-Hulk show, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If Scar is not a friendly character in any kind of way, shape, or form from his Planet Hulk stuff. And this is supposed to be a law TV comedy show. I would be very stunned if we got this character. But back then, it caused the book to jump up to $100 to $200 for a raw copy. Pretty wide range on this, but they was going for big money. Now it's a $20 to $70 book for a raw copy. This has definitely turned into a bit of a dumpster fire. Doesn't appear to have been... As we get closer and the more they describe the show, to me it seems just less and less likely that we would get a character like this in that show. Just doesn't seem to fit. So, and that has been reflected in the prices. Next, we have New Avengers number 10. First appearance of Thane. This is another brother of Thanos, and there was some rumors or spec that maybe we would get Thane in the upcoming MCU in some way, shape, or form. People started buying this book, $25, $30 raw, $125 to $200 for 9.8. Now it's a $10 to $25 book raw, so definitely turned into a bit of an I'll be back on that side. 9.8s are actually up. They're $2 to $225, so they're on that high end to slightly above what it was before, but there's not very many sales. There's only 2 sales basically since early November. They were both in that range, but only 2. So the vast majority of these books are still raw. There's not a ton of them slabbed. Next, we're getting toward the end here. We only got 3 books left. Is Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 3. This is the first appearance of Titania and Volcana. I think actually both of them are rumored for the She-Hulk show, but I know Titania has been cast, and that's what caused this book hit the list. Raw copies were going for $55 back then. A 9.8 hit $500. Now a raw copy will cost you $10 to $30. 9.8 is going for $150 to $200. This is another one. We're kind of in the lull. We're probably not getting the She-Hulk show till the summer, so you might be able to, if you can find that one, $10, $15, you might be able to grab one now and then flip it when the show comes out. We'll see and make a little bit of money off of it. But definitely a lull on here. We do know we're getting Titania because she was cast, but so yeah, we'll see how big a role she actually plays in the show. Next, I guess I said 3 books. Now I have 3 books. I had 4 books left then. We got Thor number 5. Last week we had the J. Scott Campbell cover. This week we had the actual A cover. This is the first appearance of Loki as a female. This was all during the early part of the Loki show. Back then, raw copies were going for $45 to $100 plus. Now a raw copy will cost you $10 to $25. This really has everything to do with the female Loki we saw, not really having anything to do with this version of a female Loki. So this one definitely turned into a giant dumpster fire if you chased this book back then. Yeah, you're talking about a $10 to $20 book now that some people were paying over $100 for. So next, and I should have flipped the order on these 2 books, I just realized. But anyway, the next book is Fantastic Four number 353. This is the first appearance of Mobius. Mobius was one of the better parts of this show, I thought. Owen Wilson was a lot of fun. Raw copies back then were up to $80 on average. 9.8 went for $660. Not a lot of 9.8 sales, but did go for that much. Now it's a $10 to $40 book. 9.8s have cost you $275 to $350. So we've moved away from the show, even though we're at some point going to get a second season. Yeah, not a lot of interest, not a lot of sustainability in Mobius. We have seen this now consistently with the first round of these Marvel shows. There's a big peak when the show comes on, when the character appears. And then as we move away from the show, these books are dropping, and they're dropping pretty hard. So definitely, if you want these characters, if you're interested, be patient. Really, the only one that's even slightly come back to haunt you on is that Fantastic Four 94, the first appearance of Agatha Harkness, and that's only because it had dropped way back. You had an opportunity to get for way cheaper, but it's bumped back up because now we know she's getting her own show. So there was that renewed interest. And our last book of this week is Dark Reign, Young Avengers number 1. This is the first appearance of Sylvie, the second Enchantress. So this is pretty close to the character that they actually used in the Loki show, although her origin here is very different from the origin of the Sylvie in the Loki show, the female version of Loki. But yeah, so her origin here, but this is a lot closer to what that character actually was. So raw copies of this were going for $120 back then. This one has dropped back too, just like the Mobius book. Not quite as hard, but pretty hard. $30 to $40 for a raw copy of this one. It's technically harder, yeah, because it was going for more. So it's actually dropped back more. 9.8, we're talking about one sale here, though, did go for $350 recently, which is a pretty good number for that. But this is definitely a dumpster fire on the raw side. This book was going for huge numbers. It is backed way up. Now, again, we're going to get more of this character at some point, but the book is still backed up. So now might be the time to chase it if you're interested in this character, or maybe just looking to maybe turn it again when she reappears. So that is this week's list. That's all 16 books. So fairly short list to go through this week. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.